On the coldest night of the winter, a half-frozen German Shepherd puppy appeared at the cabin door of a retired Navy SEAL and refused to step inside. Instead, it kept dragging him toward the raging blizzard, as if begging him to follow. Moments later, he realized the puppy wasn't looking for shelter. It was leading him into a mission that would break his heart and change his life forever. If you're ready for one of the most emotional rescue stories you'll ever hear, hit like, subscribe, and comment. I'm here below. May God bless everyone watching this video. A brutal winter storm crawled over the Colorado mountains, swallowing the forest in a slow, suffocating white darkness. Inside a lonely wooden cabin, buried in drifts of snow, 38-year-old former Navy SEAL Cole Harris finished securing the shutters, his movements deliberate and quiet, as if the storm were a living creature he didn't want to wake. Cole was a broad-shouldered man with a rugged, angular face shaped by wind war and old pain. His dark brown hair was kept short out of habit, though a few strands had grown uneven at the temples. A faint scar ran from his left eyebrow down to his cheekbone, a reminder of the night his team was ambushed in Kandahar, an attack that cost the life of his closest friend, Liam Carter. Since then, Cole had carried an unspoken heaviness, a mixture of survivor's guilt and exhausted purpose, the kind of weight that pressed permanently into a man's posture and eyes. He lived alone, choosing isolation because it felt safer than carrying the burden of connection again. The cabin's interior reflected him minimal disciplined, stripped of anything that wasn't necessary. The storm outside intensified its wind, slamming against the cabin like unseen hands. Cole paused, listening. A SEAL's instincts never retired. They simply waited. Something felt off, not dangerous, but out of rhythm. Then he heard it, a faint scratching, barely audible above the howl of the wind. At first, Cole dismissed it as a loose branch, but the sound came again, softer, desperate, like fingernails against wood. The hairs on the back of his neck rose. He moved toward the door with quiet steps, hand brushing the handle of the hunting knife sheathed at his hip. "Who's out there?" he muttered under his breath, more to steady himself than to expect an answer. When he unlatched the heavy wooden door and pulled it open, a violent gust of snow blasted his face, numbing his skin. But the shock wasn't from the cold. It was from the small, trembling shape curled on his porch. A German Shepherd puppy, no older than 5 or 6 months, crouched low against the doorway, as if trying to merge with the wood to escape the storm. Its coat was a striking black and tan, but patches were clumped with snow, giving the young dog a frosted, ghostly appearance. Its ribs were slightly visible beneath the fur, suggesting it had been running for a long time. The puppy's ears were half upright, half drooping too young to hold their shape fully, but its eyes were sharp and intense golden brown that glowed with intelligence far beyond its age. Cole dropped to one knee. "Easy, buddy," he said, voice gentler than he expected. He reached a hand forward. The puppy flinched, but didn't flee. Instead, it let out a tiny whine, high-pitched, urgent, then turned its head toward the dark wall of trees beyond the porch. Cole frowned. The dog wasn't just seeking shelter. It wanted him to follow. Snow whipped between them like a warning. "You're freezing," Cole murmured. "Get inside." But when he tried to lift the puppy, it twisted in his grip and planted its paws firmly on the wooden boards, refusing to cross the threshold. It barked once sharp, commanding, then stared into the forest again. A sense of unease budded in Cole's chest. Something was wrong, very wrong. His gaze drifted to the dog's collar, a simple leather strap with a metal buckle. Wedged in the buckle was a piece of torn fabric. Cole leaned in closer. The scrap was red flannel, frayed at the edges, stiff with frozen blood. His jaw tightened. People around these mountains wore flannel like a second skin. Red and black patterns were especially common among loggers, ranchers, and families living off-grid. Whoever this scrap belonged to, they were hurt, badly. He lifted the fabric to his nose. Even through the sting of cold air, the faint metallic scent of old dried blood lingered. The puppy watched him anxiously, tail tucked, low breathing, rapid and shallow. Cole's SEAL instincts roared awake. This wasn't coincidence. Someone out there had needed help desperately enough to send their dog, most likely their only hope, through a deadly storm, and that someone might still be alive. Cole looked at the dog again. You're leading me somewhere, aren't you? The puppy stepped toward the edge of the porch, gave another urgent whine, then looked back at him with an expression that almost felt human. He didn't see a stray. He saw a messenger. He saw a mission. Cole's heartbeat settled into the steady, controlled rhythm it used to take during operations. The storm no longer felt like an obstacle, it felt like terrain. The darkness no longer felt dangerous, it felt like a path. He grabbed his heavy winter jacket from the hook beside the door and shouldered into it. The puppy limped toward the first step, pausing to see if Cole was following. Cole tightened his gloves, checked the knife at his hip, and stepped out of the warmth of the cabin, letting the door swing shut behind him. The cold slapped him instantly, but he kept going. "All right," he said, voice low, resolute, and bracing against the wind. "Show me." And with that, Cole Harris walked into the heart of the blizzard, following a trembling German shepherd puppy into a night that would change everything. The storm thickened into a wall of white silence that swallowed the forest, turning every tree into a frozen silhouette carved from shadow. Cole Harris, his breath sharp with cold, his mind sharpened by instinct, secured the heavy rescue backpack across his broad shoulders. The pack contained everything he knew could mean the difference between finding a survivor and recovering a body: a compact seal-issued medical kit, bandages sealed in waterproof plastic, a trauma blanket, a pair of insulated gloves, a tactical flashlight with a shatterproof lens, a coil of climbing rope frayed slightly from past missions, and the combat knife he had carried on countless deployments. He checked each item with the same discipline that had once kept him alive in deserts, far from these mountains. The trembling German shepherd puppy stood by his boots, staring into the raging snow with a tense, purposeful posture. Cole gave the pup a name in his head, Rex, because the dog needed something that sounded strong, something that fit the quiet determination burning behind those golden brown eyes. Rex was young, barely half a year old, with paws too large for his frame and a coat that would have been glossy black and tan, if not matted with ice. Despite his youth and exhaustion, the pup carried himself like he had a mission to complete his small body, taut with fear, urgency, and unwavering loyalty. Cole knelt to Rex's level, his own breath curling in the storm like smoke rising from a dying fire. "All right, Rex." He murmured the name strange, but grounding on his tongue. "Show me." The puppy turned at once, plunging through the knee-deep snow with surprising speed, weaving between ancient pines whose branches sagged under the weight of frost. Cole followed his boots, sinking heavily with each step, his muscles burning from the effort of pushing through drifts that seemed determined to hold him back. But Cole's mind was focused, a taut thread stretched between hope and dread. Every sound, the crack of a frozen branch, the whisper of wind through the needles, the faint crunch of Rex's paws, sent electric pulses through the back of his skull. These woods, usually serene under a winter moon, now felt hostile, as if nature itself were warning him to turn back. But Cole had never been good at turning back. Not in the military, not in life, not even when he should have walked away long before the desert took his best friend Liam Carter. The memory cut through the cold Liam's laughter, echoing through dusty valleys, his easygoing nature masking the same inner fractures Cole carried. Liam had been taller, lankier, with sandy hair, and a face that always looked like it had just been kissed by the sun. He'd believed people were inherently good, and optimism Cole had lost long before war taught him the truth. When Liam died during an ambush, Cole blamed himself, and the weight of that guilt had never softened. Now, trudging through the blizzard, Cole found himself whispering a silent promise into the night. Not again. Not this time. No one else dies, because I was too late. Rex stopped suddenly. The pup's nose pressed close to the snow nostrils, flaring. Cole lifted his flashlight, its beam cutting through the swirling white to reveal a small dark spot shaped like a teardrop. A frozen droplet of blood, stark crimson against the frozen ground. Cole crouched, gloved fingers brushing the edges. Fresh enough, he whispered, his pulse tightening. Rex yelped softly and bounded ahead. Cole followed, scanning the ground with his trained eye. The next sign appeared 6 feet farther, a broken twig snapped recently enough that sap still glistened beneath the frost. Here and there he spotted more, a dragged line in the snow, as if someone had crawled or been pulled. a small shoe-shaped print unmistakably a child's, and beneath a bent branch, faint, scratch-like marks that made Cole's stomach twist. Someone had been fighting to stay alive. The wind howled louder, lashing Cole's face with icy needles. Any ordinary man would have turned back. Even an experienced hiker wouldn't last long out here. But Cole's mind moved into mission mode, cold calm, focused. He kept close to Rex, watching the dog weave with the innate precision of an animal, following the last fragile thread of hope. Cole felt his own heartbeat match the pup's urgency. Then the ground beneath them began to rise. The trees thinned. The wind sharpened into a cruel spear that stabbed through Cole's coat. Rex limped ahead, tail low, ears pinned. Cole climbed the final slope and froze. The flashlight beam fell upon a harrowing sight. The disturbed snow gave way to a wide pair of tire tracks, deep grooves carved through frozen mud and white powder. But what made Cole's breath catch was the pattern. There was no curve, no hesitation, no sign of braking. The tracks lunged straight forward, straight off the edge of the cliff. Cole stepped closer, heart pounding in a slow, heavy rhythm. The cliff's edge was a jagged mouth of rock and ice. Below it, only swirling darkness. The storm swallowed the valley so completely that the bottom might as well have been the end of the world. Rex let out a sharp, grief-stricken cry and paced near the edge, sniffing desperately as if begging Cole to understand the urgency. Cole's throat tightened. Someone had driven off this cliff, likely forced by the storm, maybe injured, possibly still alive down there somewhere below, in a place where the cold killed quickly and silently. Cole turned, scanning the area. A sturdy pine stood a few feet away, its trunk, thick with age roots, gripping the frozen earth like claws. Without hesitation, he dug into his pack, pulled out the climbing rope, and looped it around the trunk with practiced speed. Rappelling had been second nature once he had descended into caves in Iraq, cliffs in Afghanistan, and enemy compounds under moonless skies. Now he tightened the knots with hands steadier than he expected, the cold unable to shake a skill honed in fire. Rex watched him with wide, anxious eyes, whining softly. Cole crouched and placed a hand on the pup's head. "I'm going down," he said quietly. "Stay put." The wind roared, the snow surged, and Cole Harris stepped to the edge, wrapped the rope around his gloved forearm, and began lowering himself into the icy abyss, bringing SEAL training back into a world that had no mercy for the unprepared. The bottom of the ravine felt like another world, entirely a silent pocket of frozen air where the storm's roar dulled into a distant, ghostly hum. Cole Harris steadied himself after the rappel, his boots sinking into snow nearly waist deep. His breath came in sharp bursts, fogging the frozen air around his face. The beam of his flashlight trembled only slightly as he took in the scene before him. Wedged violently between two massive pine trunks, both snapped and bent from the collision, was a crumpled pickup truck that once might have been blue or gray, though now it was scraped raw by the impact and coated in ice. Steam rose weakly from the ruptured radiator, curling upward like the dying breath of a creature in pain. Rex, the young German shepherd puppy, was already scrambling through the snow ahead of him, slipping, sliding, but refusing to slow down. Each time the dog stumbled, he forced himself upright again, driven by a fear and duty too large for his small body. Cole followed, fast, his mind working with the precision of a soldier in hostile territory. He had rappelled into war zones darker than this ravine, but something about the stillness here felt worse. War had rules, patterns. Nature didn't. When he reached the truck, he saw the driver's side was crushed inward, the window shattered into lethal glitter. A faint shape slumped over the steering wheel. Cole felt his chest tighten as he approached. "I'm coming in," he murmured, more to steady his own nerves than to warn anyone. He scanned for fuel leaks, then smashed away the rest of the glass with the hilt of his knife before reaching into the cab. The figure inside was a young woman, maybe 26, with long chestnut brown hair that had fallen over her face in matted blood-streaked strands. Her skin was pale, far too pale, almost translucent, under the dim, flickering light of his flashlight. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Her face was heart-shaped, delicate, framed by soft freckles across the bridge of her nose, freckles that might have looked warm and sunlit in another life. She was slight, maybe 5'5", with the lean build of someone used to work rather than ease. A torn flannel jacket, red and black, identical in pattern to the scrap on Rex's collar, lay ripped open at the shoulder, exposing the white padding beneath. Her left leg was pinned under the mangled dashboard, twisted at an unnatural angle. Shock hypothermia trauma. Cole recognized all the signs instantly. He reached in and gently touched her shoulder. Her reaction was immediate and heartbreakingly small. Her eyelids fluttered. A thin groan escaped her chapped lips. She lifted her head by sheer force of will. Her eyes, hazel with a faint golden ring, found as unfocused at first, then sharpening with sudden urgent fear. "Hey, stay with me," Cole said, his voice rough but steady. "I'm Cole Harris. I'm here to help you." The woman's fingers twitched against the steering wheel. Cole reached for her hand, guiding her to grasp his. Her grip was shockingly weak, a trembling clutch that felt like it was slipping even as it tightened. She swallowed with difficulty. My brother." Her voice was barely audible, a ragged whisper torn apart by the cold. Cole leaned closer, bracing himself inside the broken frame of the truck to shield her from the wind. "Your brother. Where is he?" She closed her eyes as if the simple act of remembering drained the last reserves of strength inside her. He went out. Through the back window. Storm. He was scared. Her breathing hitched. He ran. Cole's pulse thudded in his ears. A child, alone, somewhere out there in the cold. He squeezed her hand gently. "What's his name?" She struggled to open her eyes. Her lips trembled as she forced the word out. "Liam." The name stabbed Cole's chest like a blade of ice. Liam, the same name as the closest friend he had ever lost. The same name he had spoken to the sand and blood years ago when he begged his teammate to stay alive. The universe had a cruel sense of irony, but this time he wouldn't fail. Rex squeezed into the wrecked cab tail low ears, pinned whining anxiously as he nudged the woman's frozen hand with his nose. Somehow that touch pulled her back from the edge long enough for her eyes to focus again. She gazed at Rex with a mixture of disbelief and relief. "Good boy," she whispered. You brought help." Cole felt her grip weaken. He leaned in quickly. "Stay with me. What's your name?" She blinked slowly, her lashes crusted with frost. Emily Bennett." Her voice was fading fast like a candle guttering in a cold draft. Cole nodded, forcing calm into his tone, even as dread coiled around his throat. "Emily, listen to me. I'm going to get you out." She shook her head weakly, her hair brushing against the shattered glass. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps. No, you can't. Dashboard. Crushed." She coughed, and the sound was wet and sharp. "Save him." Cole shook his head. "I'm not leaving you." Her eyes widened with a sudden desperate strength born from terror, not life. She clutched his wrist with the last of her strength. "Please," she rasped. "He's 7. He's all I have. Save Liam." Rex barked sharply, then a piercing urgent sound that echoed off the ravine walls like an alarm. Emily flinched, then exhaled slowly, her chest trembling. Her head fell back against the seat. For a moment, Cole thought she was gone, but then her lips parted in a thin, broken whisper. "Go." Her fingers slipped from his wrist, falling limp against the cold metal. Cole froze, fighting the instinct to try forcing her awake. A SEAL's duty was to save who could be saved. He knew hypothermia's final deception, the illusion of warmth, the soft, peaceful surrender. Emily had minutes left, maybe less. A brutal truth settled into Cole's bones. If he stayed with her, the boy would die. Rex barked again, louder, fiercer, as if commanding Cole to move. The puppy's body shook, not from the cold, but from desperate urgency. Cole swallowed hard. Emotions clawed up his throat, anger, grief, helplessness, but he crushed them down with a soldier's discipline. He pressed Emily's gently cooling hand, once a silent promise. "I'll find him," he whispered. Rex barked sharply in agreement, as if the mission had officially transferred to them both. Cole backed out of the truck, snow biting at his face, and scanned the dark forest above. Somewhere in that storm, a terrified little boy was wandering alone. Cole's jaw set, his pulse steadied, his breath sharpened. He was a SEAL trained for impossible rescues, and this was the mission. Rex bounded ahead, leaving a streak of paw prints in the snow. Cole followed, leaving the dying woman behind in the shattered cab, stepping into the blizzard toward the child who still had a chance to live. The storm had grown into a monstrous white labyrinth, its winds shrieking through the skeletal pines like ancient voices mourning something already lost. Snow slammed sideways, slicing at Cole Harris's face in icy sheets as he trudged forward each step, a battle against nature's tightening grip. His breath came out in fast, visible bursts, the cold scraping his lungs raw, but he pushed harder, driven by a fear that had begun clawing deep behind his ribs. Rex, the half-grown German shepherd puppy with frost clinging to his black and tan fur, bounded ahead, though his movements had begun to falter. His paws sank deep into the powder, and he stumbled every few meters, but the pup's determination remained unbroken. His tail stayed low, his ears pinned flat to his head, but his nose worked tirelessly, tracing tiny, fragile patterns in the snow. Those patterns were the only hope, faint, shallow footprints, no wider than a child's palm. As Cole crouched beside one of them, brushing away the fresh snow with a glove, a pulse of dread shot through him. The print was uneven, suggesting the child had staggered, and worse, the direction shifted unsteadily. Liam. Cole whispered the name with a tight throat. The name alone struck something bruised and fragile inside him. Years ago, he had knelt beside another Liam, his teammate, his closest friend, as the helicopter dust roared overhead in Kandahar, the desert shaking with gunfire. He had held his friend's cooling hand and promised help that came too late. Now fate had carved another path with the same name, as if daring him to fail again. But he would not. Not twice. Rex let out a sharp bark, a high-pitched, urgent sound that vanished instantly into the blizzard. Cole rose immediately and followed. Rex sprinted toward a jagged rock formation, jutting out of the slope like a cracked fang. The wind surged around it violently, carving out a natural windbreak. At its base, a narrow opening yawned between two slabs of stone, almost invisible unless one knew exactly where to look. Rex lunged toward it, paws scrabbling against ice, barking wildly now, his entire body trembling with desperate insistence. Cole dropped to his knees and shined his flashlight into the crevice. The beam cut through the gloom, and his breath caught. A small boy lay curled deep inside the stone hollow. 7 years old, tiny compared to the oversized winter coat someone had zipped around him. His hair, a soft, sandy blonde that curled at the ends, was plastered to his forehead with frost. His skin, usually the gentle pink of childhood, had turned the sickly blue-gray of severe hypothermia. His lips were motionless. Worst of all, he was no longer shivering. Cole knew that sign. When the body grew too cold to tremble, it was on the cusp of shutting down entirely. Liam. Cole breathed, his voice trembling not from cold, but from fear. The boy's face was heartbreakingly small in the beam of the flashlight, with soft, rounded cheeks and faint freckles that looked eerily like his sister Emily's stubborn little constellations across the bridge of his nose. The boy's eyelashes had frozen together, his tiny hands curled inward like fragile leaves stiffened by frost. Cole crawled inside the crevice, the stone scraping his shoulders. The cold inside felt like an open tomb. Rex wedged his body across the entrance, blocking the worst of the wind, with his own small frame, his body forming a trembling living shield. Cole didn't waste a second. He slipped off his thick, SEAL-issued jacket, lined with thermal fleece, even as the cold bit savagely at his arms and torso. He wrapped Liam in it, pulling the boy's frozen limbs gently toward his own chest. Then he pressed the child's icy body against his bare skin, locking him in with both arms. "Come on, kid," Cole whispered, voice cracking. "Not today. Not like this. Breathe for me." He began the SEAL body heat recovery technique, a method he had used once on his partner during a mountain operation in Norway. Chest-to-chest contact-controlled breathing hands placed along the spine to stimulate circulation. He spoke continuously, because sometimes the sound of a human voice could call someone back from the edge. "Your sister. She's waiting," Cole murmured. "You hold on. You hear me. You hold on." Minutes felt like hours. The cold gnawed at his bones, but he clung to the small body, willing his warmth into the child, as if he could force life back into him by sheer will. Then finally, Liam's chest twitched. A tiny, weak breath, another. Cole nearly sobbed in relief. "Good kid, good. Stay with me." He adjusted his grip, tucking the boy's head under his chin to protect it from the cold. Rex whimpered softly from the cave mouth, his ears flicking anxiously, but he remained firmly planted as the storm battered his small body. Cole knew they couldn't stay. Hypothermia recovery required shelter. Heat sustained dryness. The crevice provided none of that. With effort, he maneuvered himself backward, carrying Liam with one arm while using the other to brace against the icy stone. Snow hammered down even harder outside. Wind tore sideways, and the world resembled a white battlefield, where direction and distance dissolved into chaos. Rex stayed close to Cole's heels as he trudged uphill toward the ravine where the wrecked truck lay waiting. Every step was agony, a war between strength and exhaustion. Cole's muscles screamed. His breath grew ragged, but he did not stop. He could feel Liam's faint breaths against his chest, far too shallow, far too slow, but still breaths. That was enough to keep him moving. The climb felt endless, but eventually the familiar shape of the broken pickup truck materialized through the snow. Cole's heart sank when he saw the still figure inside. Emily Bennett, her long brown hair now stiff with frost, her expression serene yet empty, sat unmoving in the crushed cab. A faint smile lingered on her lips, as if she had slipped away peacefully the moment she felt her brother safe. Cole stood in the snow chest, heaving Liam, trembling weakly in his arms, Rex whimpering beside him. Grief struck him like a knife, but there was no time to collapse, no time for mourning. He stared at Emily one last moment, swallowing the ache in his throat. She had given her last breath to protect her brother, and now the boy depended on him. Cole turned away from the truck, tightening his grip on Liam as the storm howled around them. The mission wasn't over, not even close. The storm had finally loosened its iron grip on the mountains when the rescue team arrived, their voices echoing across the shattered ravine like distant thunder. Snow still fell, but gently, now soft feather-like flakes drifting through the air, as if winter itself had grown tired of its own fury. Cole Harris stood near the wrecked truck, with Liam in his arms, the boy wrapped tightly in the oversized thermal jacket, his small face pressed into Cole's chest. Liam's sandy blonde hair was still stiff with frost, but faint warmth returned to his cheeks each time he exhaled against Cole's skin. Rex, now exhausted from his relentless efforts, pressed his young body firmly against Cole's leg, his amber eyes sharp with protective instinct. The puppy's fur, black and tan, and now thicker from the early stages of growth, bristled every time a rescuer approached. He growled under his breath, low warning, unwavering. When two paramedics neared with a stretcher, Liam's tiny hands clutched Cole with sudden panic. The boy's breath hitched, and his eyes hazel with a golden ring, like his sister's went wide with terror. He shook his head frantically, burying himself deeper against Cole's chest, as though afraid the world would rip him away from the last safe thing he had left. Cole gently rubbed the back of the boy's neck. "Easy, kid. They're here to help," he whispered, but Liam clung harder, refusing to loosen his grip. The paramedics froze surprised, exchanging quiet glances. One of them, a middle-aged man with graying hair and a lined, weary face named Tom Weaver, raised both hands in a gesture of calm. Tom had soft brown eyes and a slight limp in his left leg, a remnant of an old skiing accident that had ended his dream of joining the Air Force decades ago. He was patient, compassionate, the kind of man who never rushed a frightened child. "It's all right," Tom said gently. "He can stay with you. We just need to check him." But Liam refused to be touched by anyone but Cole. Rex stood guard, growling whenever hands came too close. Tom eventually stepped back, giving Cole space as he conducted the initial assessment from a respectful distance. When the rescue helicopter finally transported Emily's body out of the ravine, Liam reached for Rex and let out a small broken sound. Cole closed his eyes briefly, the grief pressing hard against his ribs. He held Liam tighter, knowing the boy was too fragile to face the truth yet. Hours later, at the small rural clinic in town, social services arrived. The agent Marilyn Crowe was a stern woman in her late 40s with sharp cheekbones, thin lips, and dark hair pulled into a severe bun. Her gray wool coat and perfectly polished boots made her look like someone who preferred order over emotion. Her personality matched her appearance, strict, efficient, and unyielding. She wasn't unkind, but she followed rules with tunnel vision precision. "Mr. Harris," she said, adjusting her clipboard, "the boy will need to be transferred to a temporary care facility. The storm has delayed some transportation, but we can still arrange immediate placement." The words hit Liam like a physical blow. The boy trembled, let out a whimper, and immediately buried his face into Cole's jacket. His fingers knotted into the fabric as if trying to fuse himself there permanently. Rex stepped between Liam and the agent, letting out a sharp bark, a warning, an oath, a declaration of loyalty. Cole felt something shift inside him, something that had been locked away for years. A protective instinct rose like a storm. He took a slow breath, steady but firm. "He's not going anywhere tonight," Cole stated. "He needs stability. He needs the dog, and the dog needs him." Marilyn lifted an eyebrow. "The dog is unregistered. It can't stay with him." Tom, the paramedic, stepped forward, his voice calm but resolute. "The dog has a name tag and a purchase receipt in the sister's truck. The pup was a gift to the boy. Legally, it's his." Marilyn paused, clearly annoyed that the law was no longer on her side. "Fine, the dog can stay, but the child still requires placement." Liam whimpered again, and Cole felt the boy's entire body shaking. Something inside Cole hardened. He saw himself not as a loner, not as a soldier, but as the only person this child trusted in the world. "He stays with me," Cole said. The room fell silent. Even Marilyn blinked, thrown off balance. "Mr. Harris, you're not a guardian. You don't have training. I have training." Cole cut in quietly. "More than most, and he trusts me." He didn't raise his voice, but the steel in his tone silenced the room. Tom tried to help. "The roads are blocked anyway. No vehicle is leaving town tonight." Marilyn narrowed her eyes, but relented. 30 days. Temporary custody, while we review his case." Liam pressed his forehead into Cole's collarbone, shaking with soft, broken breaths. Cole placed a steady hand on the back of the boy's head. "We'll figure it out," he whispered. That night, Cole brought Liam and Rex back to his cabin. The place, once a sanctuary for loneliness, warmed with unfamiliar life. Liam slept, curled against Rex on a pile of blankets, while Cole kept watch from a chair, a soldier standing guard over a fragile new world. In the days that followed, Liam's nightmares came often. The boy would wake with silent screams, clawing for someone who wasn't there anymore. Cole slept on the floor beside him, never leaving always ready with a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. Slowly, the nightmares faded. Slowly, Liam began to speak again, small words first, then longer ones, trusting Cole enough to let the world back in. Rex grew quickly, his frame filling out his ears, standing tall, his posture becoming noble and alert. No longer a trembling puppy, he became a guardian, steady, loyal, and fierce. 30 days passed, then months. A year later, in a small courtroom, smelling faintly of pine cleaner and winter coats, Cole stood beside Liam and Rex. The judge, a tall, soft-spoken man with silver hair, reviewed the documents with kind eyes. When he finally looked up, he smiled gently. "Mr. Harris, congratulations, Liam is now your son." Liam's hand slipped into Cole's without hesitation. Rex wagged his tail, once solemn and proud. Later, the three of them visited Emily's grave. Snow blanketed the hillside, soft as a sigh. Cole placed a wildflower on the headstone. He didn't speak much, but Liam did. "She's with the angels," the boy whispered. Cole nodded, voice low. "She'd be proud of you." As they walked back toward the cabin, holding hands, winter softened into the first hints of spring. The river ice cracked, pines shed their snow, and the heart Cole once believed frozen forever found warmth again in the boy who needed him and the dog who refused to let go. Sometimes, in the coldest winters of our lives, God sends help in forms we never expect, a child's fragile voice, a loyal German shepherd, or a stranger whose heart still carries the warmth of compassion. What happened on that mountain wasn't just survival. It was a quiet miracle, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, Heaven still moves through ordinary people who choose to love, protect, and stand up for one another. And just like Cole, Liam, and Rex, we are never truly alone, unless we choose to be. Every day, someone out there needs the kindness. Only you can give a word, a gesture, a small act of courage that can become someone's miracle. If this story touched your heart, please like the video. Share it with someone who needs hope today and comment your thoughts below. And may God bless you, protect your home, warm your heart, and walk beside you through every storm of your life.